The Galactic Empire had encountered hundreds of sentient species across the spiral arms, some fierce, some wise, most compliant. By now, their diplomatic protocols for first contact had become little more than formalities. When Imperial sensors picked up consistent electromagnetic emissions from Sol 3, Earth, their analysts barely raised an eye-ridge. Earth was categorized as a pre-FTL civilization, still fragmented by borders, politics, and archaic combustion engines. The dominant species, humans, had only recently begun scattering satellites in orbit and sending clumsy rovers to nearby rocks. Their communication was disorganized, their languages numerous, and their military capabilities laughable by Imperial standards. To the Galactic Bureau of Expansion, Earth was just another low-priority candidate for integration. An ambassadorial scout ship, sleek and shimmering with plasma coils, was dispatched to make contact. The mission brief was simple. Offer Earth a peaceful annexation under the benevolent rule of the Empire. Standard script. Praise their cultural uniqueness. Offer access to higher knowledge, and ultimately guide them toward assimilation. Resistance was not anticipated. The ship entered Earth orbit without resistance. Every ground-based defense system either failed to detect it or assumed it was a natural phenomenon. The Empire was mildly amused. A broadcast was sent globally and every major human language synchronized through their satellite network. You are honored. The Galactic Empire comes in peace. Join us and be uplifted. World leaders scrambled to respond. Emergency meetings were held in the United Nations. There was disbelief, awe, and fear, but also something the Empire didn't anticipate: pride. Humans were not humbled by the appearance of a superior force. They asked questions, demanded time, wanted clarification on integration. The Empire interpreted this as stalling. To speed negotiations, the envoy descended to the surface, choosing Washington, D.C. as the landing site based on human data traffic volume. A formal procession was arranged. Cameras rolled. The world watched as the alien ambassador, flanked by imposing guards, delivered its offer to Earth's assembled leaders. The speech was condescending. The ambassador referred to humanity as a young species, still crawling toward enlightenment, and described the Empire as a parent extending its hand to a willful child. When a decorated general interrupted to challenge the language used, an Imperial guard struck him, hard, before millions of live viewers. That slap echoed across the planet louder than any explosion could have. Humanity's fragmented politics disappeared almost overnight. Nations that hadn't spoken in decades opened emergency channels. Enemies became allies. Scientists, militaries, and intelligence agencies began sharing data at unprecedented speeds. The moment Earth's pride was bloodied, it awoke something ancient and terrifying beneath their skin: a need to prove themselves. The Empire, watching from orbit, assumed they'd cowed the humans. To them, this was the usual power imbalance display that preceded peaceful annexation. But Earth wasn't intimidated, it was insulted. What the Empire saw as dominance, humanity saw as tyranny. A single sentence began circulating across human networks, first as a meme, then as a rallying cry. They touched one of ours on our own soil, and the response, growing louder by the hour: they will regret it. The Galactic Empire had made its first and greatest mistake, underestimating humanity not by their technology, but by their will. The Empire, confident in its superiority, grew impatient. Earth's leaders had not accepted annexation, nor had they submitted to the authority of the Galactic Order. From the Empire's view, this small blue world was refusing a generous gift. Arrogantly, irrationally. To demonstrate discipline, the Empire authorized a limited orbital strike on a human population center, a standard show of power, a targeted plasma lance no larger than a pinprick compared to what their dreadnoughts could do, aimed at disrupting infrastructure and sparking fear, not annihilation. The target was chosen for visibility and influence: Chicago. At precisely 08:32 local time, the sky tore open. A column of white-hot plasma lanced down from the heavens, vaporizing 18 city blocks and turning glass to ash. Skyscrapers melted. Roads liquefied. Over 2 million died in under 4 seconds. And humanity, in that instant, changed. News anchors screamed live on air. Social media caught fire, showing the mushrooming inferno. First responders marched into hell with no hesitation. All around the globe, the response was not surrender, but rage. Grief hardened into fury within hours. Every country declared the event a global act of war. Where once humans had been squabbling nations, now they were a species with a common enemy. The United States opened all black-budget tech projects to a newly formed Terran Defense Accord. China sent its orbital tech to NATO scientists. Russian cyber units were integrated into a new multinational AI development lab. India deployed quantum comms to connect every military command. Even rogue states pledged assistance, not out of politics but vengeance. But perhaps most critical, humanity now had imperial debris to study. Parts of the ambassadorial shuttle destroyed in a simultaneous protest had survived. Its shielding, weaponry cores and power cells were scattered across crash zones. And humanity, known across its history for one trait above all, did what it did best. It learned. Fast. Within days, a team at CERN had unlocked the principles behind the Empire's power matrix. Within 2 weeks, DARPA had begun building crude versions of gravitic shielding. Within a month, human scientists were testing plasma-resistant alloys based on alien molecular structures. The Empire, watching from its orbiting fleet, was oblivious to the transformation taking place below. Their analysts assumed the humans would collapse in fear, that the loss of a city would bring submission, that these primitives lacked the spine to retaliate. Instead, what they got was this: a hacked transmission. Earth hijacked the Empire's own comm beacon and broadcast a message into every Imperial fleet in the Sol system. This was your only warning. You are not gods. You are murderers, and we remember our dead. That signal was followed by the coordinated launch of nearly every war-capable satellite, drone, and ICBM Earth had in its arsenal, targeting orbital listening stations and small escort craft. They weren't high-tech, but they were fast, unpredictable, and many. One Imperial cruiser was crippled. 3 scout ships went dark, and more importantly, the Empire learned a hard truth. Humans didn't crumble when attacked. They sharpened their knives. They had touched Chicago. Now Earth was at war. The Galactic Empire was accustomed to conflict. They had crushed dozens of rebellions, subdued countless worlds, and faced insurgents far more advanced than Earth. But this wasn't normal. Earth should have panicked. Its people should have begged for mercy, groveling under the weight of imperial power. Instead, Earth built. What the Empire didn't understand, what no simulation had predicted, was that humans didn't fear death the way other species did. They adapted to it. They trained in it. They evolved because of it. And once humanity unified, it moved with terrifying speed. Within weeks, Earth had become one giant war factory. Civilian manufacturing plants were repurposed to build drone swarms. College students volunteered as coders and reverse engineers. SpaceX, Roscosmos, and CNSA merged into the Terran Orbital Command, converting their platforms into makeshift weapons. Mining companies sent raw materials directly to newly formed orbital assembly rings, churning out jury-rigged spacecraft covered in scrap armor and armed with salvaged alien energy cores. They weren't pretty, but they worked. The Empire monitored it all with cold arrogance, assuming it was just a last act of desperation. But they failed to realize what they were seeing was not chaos. It was evolution. Accelerated. Deliberate. Then came the first blow. Stealth-modified ISS, equipped with human-made thrusters and Imperial-grade cloaking, slammed into an Empire sensor buoy near Mars. It was a suicide mission, piloted by volunteers. The explosion knocked out real-time data streaming for the entire Imperial Sol fleet. For 3 minutes they were blind. In that window, 12 human vessels, codenamed Wraithhawks, breached the perimeter and delivered EMP payloads directly into 3 cruisers' command relays. Those ships didn't just go dark, they shut down completely. The Empire's fleet captain, Lord Admiral Sarax, couldn't comprehend it. How could a species that didn't have functioning warp drives yesterday be disabling his ships today? His analysts had no answer. One of them whispered, "They're building weapons faster than we can catalog them." Psychological warfare followed. Human forces began using broadcasts to disrupt Imperial morale. They flooded the communication bands with eerie silence broken by single human voices. Calm, cold, filled with grief and fury. Chicago was our Pearl Harbor. You didn't conquer us, you woke us. We don't want peace. Not until we're done. The Empire's soldiers, long used to docile conquests, began to crack. They weren't fighting frightened primitives. They were fighting something worse. An intelligent, grieving enemy who refused to stop adapting. Humanity's AI, still primitive compared to the Empire's, began working in hybrid with human intuition. This mix of gut instinct and algorithmic prediction allowed Earth forces to pull off impossible feints, ambushes, and self-sacrificial strikes that made no tactical sense, until they worked. The final blow came when Imperial scouts reported a mobile weapons platform constructed on Earth's moon, powered by a modified alien plasma coil. It had been built in just 17 days. The Empire was stunned. No species had ever learned this quickly. No species had ever pushed back this hard. And as Earth's global signal lit up with a defiant message, "We're not done yet," the Empire realized something horrifying. They weren't at war with savages, they were at war with humans. The Empire expected Earth's rage to be short-lived. In their long history, many species flared violently in the face of domination. But like a dying star, they always burned out. Humanity, however, was doing something new. They were organizing for victory. By now, Terran Command had consolidated under a single unified body, the Human Defense Coalition, HDC, a mix of top strategists, scientists, and military minds across the globe. Dozens of languages. One goal. The moon base, codenamed Outpost Athena, began launching small strike ships called Valkyries, retrofitted with both human and Imperial tech. They weren't elegant, they were brutal. Every inch of their design screamed function. Overform, spikes of raw metal reinforced hulls, engines ran hot and dirty. Weaponry included salvaged plasma cannons strapped next to high-yield railguns powered by hacked fusion batteries. These were not exploratory vessels. They were vengeance machines. The HDC knew they couldn't win a prolonged war of attrition. Earth had only just begun to grasp the complexities of space warfare. So they focused on unpredictability, hit-and-run tactics, signal jamming, asymmetrical engagements. Imperial ships found themselves ambushed by ships emerging from asteroid fields, or trailing comet tails like ghosts. No battle was clean, no encounter predictable. And then came Operation Dustveil, the moment the war changed direction. Humanity's spies had cracked into low-tier Empire battle chatter. A pattern emerged. Imperial logistics ran through a command outpost on Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon. The base served as a supply depot, communications relay, and refueling station for the Sol fleet. It was also considered untouchable. The HDC disagreed. Using cloaked scrap freighters and modified mining rigs, they launched a coordinated assault on Ganymede. They didn't bring overwhelming firepower. They brought desperation. Suicide pilots, plasma torches, kinetic bombardments from rail-launched iron rods. Human commandos wearing rebreathers and zero-pressure suits boarded the outpost in manually steered pods. The fighting was brutal. Bodies floated in blood-slick corridors. Atmospheric vents spewed freezing fog. But when the dust cleared, the Terran flag was flying over Ganymede, and the outpost was destroyed. It was the first time in Galactic Empire history that a post within an occupied system had been taken by force. The response from Earth? A single broadcast. "You made first contact. We'll make the last." Back on Earth, there were no celebrations, only silence. Mourning mixed with resolve. Humanity had crossed a line. They were no longer defending. They were advancing. Empire, Command, now fully aware of the threat, sent reinforcements. Battlecruisers warped in from nearby systems. Dreadnoughts entered Sol orbit. But it was too late. Humanity was no longer just a planet. They were now a force spread through the system. Satellite-based railguns, space-mined ice shields, and stealth drone swarms began pummeling the arriving fleets. The Empire's command structure was overwhelmed, not technologically, but psychologically. Their enemy wasn't acting like a species under siege. They were acting like a species that had made up its mind: survive at all costs, and make the enemy pay. The war had officially left Earth's atmosphere, and the galaxy was about to witness what humanity could do when untethered. For thousands of cycles, the Galactic Empire had never truly lost a war. Skirmishes, yes. Resistance movements occasionally. But never full-scale defeat. Not in open space. Not with their war machine intact. Until now. The tide turned not with overwhelming firepower, but with relentless unpredictability. Humanity had achieved something no species in the Empire's vast history ever had. They weaponized chaos. The psychological toll became impossible to ignore. Empire captains reported, crew members requesting reassignment from Sol duty. AI combat systems flagged human tactics as logically erratic and high fatality risk. Even the vaunted Sithari Command Legion, biologically engineered elite warriors, requested strategic withdrawals, citing unquantifiable terror behaviors in human opponents. It wasn't just what humans built, it was how they fought. On a battlefield orbiting Saturn's moon Titan, a single Terran Valkyrie-class ship flew directly into the path of an Imperial dreadnought, its crew sacrificing themselves to open a breach in the shields. What followed was a swarm of microdrones, each smaller than a child's toy, laced with antimatter charges. The dreadnought disintegrated from the inside out. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't glorious. It was effective. Earth's fleet numbers were still dwarfed by the Empire, but each engagement now came with staggering costs for the invaders. Imperial analysts tried to predict human actions using simulations based on rational models, but humans weren't rational. They retaliated with spite. They adapted with pain. They advanced with grief, and they fought with the fury of a species that had nothing to lose. Every defeat became a lesson. Every loss was a seed for vengeance. The final crack came at the Battle of Neptune's Reach. Here, the Empire made a final push, bringing a supercarrier and 3 escort fleets to deliver a decisive blow. The plan was clear: overwhelm human resistance with sheer numbers and erase their orbital infrastructure once and for all. They were met by silence. No ships, no resistance. Just a few satellites and debris fields. Then the satellites activated. Humanity had hidden kinetic impactors, rail-launched, rods buried in Neptune's ice belt, programmed to activate once mass signatures reached a certain threshold. The incoming fleets were pelted with tungsten at velocities so high, the impacts ripped through shields and hulls like paper. What remained was picked off by stealth drones guided by Earth's hybrid AI pilot teams, flying erratic, suicidal patterns no machine could predict. By the time the supercarrier tried to flee, a squadron of Terran gravity mines locked onto its engine wake. It exploded into a silent ball of fire, its remains becoming a new ring around Neptune. The Empire was now in crisis mode. Lord Admiral Sarax, once so certain of victory, issued a command never before uttered by the Empire in its home systems: full, tactical withdrawal. Prepare for Galactic Council review. The Sol system was officially deemed a zone of hostile advancement. The message sent ripples through the Empire's vast bureaucracy and loyal vassal races. A primitive world had made them bleed, had held the line, had broken a battle-hardened navy with scrap metal, stolen tech, and sheer willpower. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had shattered the illusion of Empire invincibility. The retreat was not noble. It wasn't orderly. It was panic disguised as strategy. When the Galactic Empire issued the command to abandon the Sol system, it shattered the illusion of control it had wielded over the galaxy for millennia. Entire fleets scrambled for warp lanes, stumbling over each other to escape the relentless fury of a species no longer content to simply defend their world. Humanity had become the hunter. In the skies above Saturn, burning wreckage drifted among the rings. Near Jupiter, sensor ghosts, human-manufactured jamming drones, mimicked incoming threats, keeping the fleeing armadas in constant disarray. Even retreating became dangerous. The humans made sure of it. The final transmission, intercepted by Earth's deep space array from the Imperial command vessel, was fractured and raw. Unacceptable losses. Do not engage. Sol is lost. Repeat, do not. And just like that, they were gone. But Earth was not celebrating. Not yet. Not truly. The cost had been unimaginable. Cities lay in ruins. Millions were dead. Oceans still carried the silent weight of fallen ships and scorched satellites. But there was something greater in the air now, something no alien invader had expected to find on a primitive world. Unity. Earth's nations had fused into something new. Political differences had dissolved beneath shared trauma. Languages and borders became less important than survival. The Human Defense Coalition remained, not as a wartime necessity, but as a permanent reality. And with peace, if one could call it that, came ambition. The message Earth sent across the stars wasn't one of surrender. It wasn't even a warning. It was a promise. You came to us in arrogance. You left in fear. We remember everything, and we are coming. Galactic diplomats scrambled to understand what had happened. Imperial High Command spun the story, calling it a tactical redeployment and downplaying the loss. But the lie didn't hold. The truth was etched in every surviving Empire officer's eyes. They had faced a species that shouldn't have won. That couldn't have won. And yet did. Whispers began spreading across the galaxy. From the border worlds to the central spires of the Empire's core. Worlds, beings once taught to scoff at humanity, now exchanged stories in hushed tones. They spoke of burning skies, of ships born from scrapyards, of warriors who screamed in grief and charged into death with smiles. They called them monsters. They called them mad. They called them human. For the first time in galactic memory, a death world, species had faced the full wrath of the Empire and forced it to flee, not through superior firepower or ancient technology, but through rage, unity, and relentless will. The Sol system was now marked in all Empire star charts in blood red. Do not enter, hostile territory, human-controlled. And beyond Sol, humanity had already begun to reach. Scouts were sent to nearby systems. War debris was gathered, studied, integrated. Human AIs matured. New ships were forged, not from desperation, but from dominance. Earth was no longer a backwater world. It was the beginning of something terrifying. A species once seen as prey had earned a new title in the galactic lexicon, the species that made the Empire run, and the galaxy would never forget the day humanity roared, and the stars listened.